General Audience number 62 of April 29th, 1981. We have already devoted a series of reflections to the meaning of the words Christ spoke in the Sermon on the Mount, in which he exhorts his listeners to purity of heart and calls their attention even to the concupiscent look. We cannot forget these words of Christ when we consider the issue of the vast sphere of art, above all when it has the character of a visual image or show. And likewise, when one is dealing with the sphere of mass culture, which is so significant in our times because it is connected with the broadcasting technology of audiovisual communication. We said last time that this sphere of man's activity is at times accused of pornovision, just as in the case of literature, the accusation is that of pornography. The one, as well as the other, takes place when the limit of shame or of personal sensibility is overstepped with regard to what is connected with the human body, with its nakedness. When, in a work of art by audiovisual media, one violates the body's right to intimacy in its masculinity and femininity. And in the final analysis, when one violates the intimate and constant order of the gift and of reciprocal self-giving, which is inscribed in femininity and masculinity across the whole structure of being human. This deep inscription, or rather incision, is decisive for the spousal meaning of the human body. That is, for the fundamental call it receives, that of forming the communion of persons and of participating in it. It is obvious that in works of art or in the products of audiovisual artistic reproduction, this constant directedness toward the gift, that is, that deep inscription of the meaning of the human body, can be violated only in the intentional order of reproduction and representation. As we said before, here we are dealing with the human body as a model or subject. Nevertheless, if the sense of shame and personal sensibility are offended in such cases, this happens because of their transfer into the dimension of social communication, and thus because of the fact that one turns into public property, as it were, what does and should strictly belong in man's right feeling to an interpersonal relation, what is bound, as we emphasized before, to the very communion of persons, and corresponds in its own realm to man's inner truth, and thus also to the integral truth about man. It is not possible to agree on this point with the representations of so-called naturalism who appeal to the right to everything that is human in works of art and in the products of artistic reproduction, and who claim that in this way they act in the name of the realistic truth about man. It is precisely this truth about man, the whole truth about man, that requires us to consider the sense of the intimacy of the body and the consistency of the gift connected with the masculinity and femininity of the body itself, which reflects the mystery of man, proper to the instruction of the person. We must consider this truth about man also in the artistic order if we want to speak of a full realism. One notices here that the order proper to the communion of persons agrees profoundly with a vast and differentiated area of communication. As we said already in our earlier analyses, where we turned to Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, see TOB Audiences 13 through 19, the human body, in its nakedness, understood as a manifestation of the person and as the person's gift or sign of trust in and of giving to another person who is aware of the gift, who is chosen and decided to respond to it in an equally personal way, becomes the source of a particular interpersonal communication. As we said already, this is a particular communication in humanity itself. This interpersonal communication penetrates deeply into the system of communion, communio personarum, and at the same time grows from it and develops correctly in its context, precisely because of the great value of the body in this system of interpersonal communion, making the body in its nakedness, which expresses precisely the element of the gift, the object or subject of a work of art or an audiovisual reproduction, is a problem that is by nature not only aesthetic but also ethical. In fact, that element of the gift is, so to speak, suspended in the dimension of an unknown reception and of an unforeseen response, and therefore, and thereby, it is in some way threatened in the intentional order, in the sense that it can become an anonymous object of appropriation, an object of abuse. This is why the integral truth about man constitutes in this matter the basis of the norm according to which the good or evil of determinate actions, of behavior, of morality, and situations is formed. Precisely because of his body and his sex, femininity and masculinity, the truth about man, the truth about what is particularly personal and interior in him creates precise limits that one must not overstep. These limits must be recognized and observed by the artist who makes the human body the model or subject of a work of art or audiovisual reproduction. Neither he nor others who carry responsibility in this field have the right to demand, propose, or allow other human beings whom they invite, exhort, or admit to seeing and looking at the image to violate these limits together with them or because of them. What in itself constitutes the content and deep personal value of the order of gift and of the mutual self-giving of the person in the image is, as a subject, uprooted from its own authentic substratum in order to become an object, and what is more, in some way, an anonymous object by means of social communication. The whole problem of pornovision and of pornography, as it appears on the basis of what was said above, is not the effect of a puritanical mentality or of a narrow moralism, nor is it the product of a way of thinking burdened by Manichaeism. What is at issue is rather an extremely important and fundamental sphere of values to which man cannot remain indifferent because of the dignity of humanity, because of the personal character and eloquence of the human body. Through works of art and the activity of audiovisual media, this whole content and these values can be formed and deepened, but they can also be deformed and destroyed in man's heart. We can see that we find ourselves continually within the orbit of Christ's words spoke in the Sermon on the Mount. The problems we're dealing with here should also be examined in the light of the words that speak about looking, born from concupiscence as adultery committed in the heart. And so it seems that reflection about these problems, which are important for creating a climate favorable to education and chastity, is an indispensable appendix to all preceding analyses, which we have devoted to this topic in the course of many Wednesday meetings.